Right. Toine Manders, welcome. Today is the 29th of September and we are having a special here on the HonklerHangout Twitch stream because today is my birthday. I am Liberlander Yoshi Livo. I'm streaming daily on Twitch 20 miles out of Liberland. And you are one of my, I should say, more regular guests. You have been a friend of the show since the start. We have had a number of interviews, well over five, I believe, six or I don't know the exact number, but this is another one in that line. And it's been a couple of months. Summer has happened. Twan, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Well, it's my birthday, Twan. I feel great. Although I'm a little bit tired because I was excited over what's gonna happen today. I'm trying to sell, or no, I always say that wrong. I am going to sell 10,000 Liberland merits in the next 5 weeks. And I'm excited over that. So I slept at 6 o'clock this morning. I woke up at 10, but I keep on smiling. I feel great. So yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. Twan,
Good.
one of the things I would like to ask you about, we have heard, of course, your story about how your business was, well, kind of, what's the right word for it? What shall we call it?
Destroy?
Destroyed, bullied, I want to say, but destroyed is even better. And by the Dutch state, because you helped people avoid taxation, you or actually you optimized their taxation. That's how I would like to refer to it. Um, how is it? We are. Let's say. Let me say it different. We are approximately 40 days out for the from the United States elections. Are you following it at all? Who is your favorite candidate? What do you think is going to happen? How much of an impact do you think Corona will have? Do you believe the narrative of Trump that the postal service is going to manipulate the outcome? I can ask a million more questions, but um, let's talk about the elections in the U.S. a little bit. How do you look at that?
My favorite candidate? Well, obviously, if I could vote in the United States, I would vote Libertarian.
That means Jorgensen.
Uh, that means Joe Jorgensen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the other two candidates are people who are very much in favor of big government, of keeping government big.
Yeah.
I guess Biden wants to make it even bigger than it already is, a lot bigger than it already is. So, but that's a matter of degree. They're very close together compared to the Libertarian Party platform, which calls for a radical reduction in the size of government, um, and which would eliminate uh, pretty much every legislation passed and every rule passed since the last 200 years. Um, so it's a huge difference. The Libertarian Party of the United States wants to eliminate the income tax, wants to deregulate every industry. Um, well, as a first step, wants to bring back government to its constitutional size, which is a very small uh, size compared to how big government today is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the uh, as for the other two candidates that most people are talking about, I would say that Trump is obviously a very bad candidate. He's a liar. He's he has no principles. He has promised to end the wars, didn't end any of them. He has.
But he didn't start a new one either. He didn't start a new one
He
either.
didn't start anything either. I was starting off with the bad stuff. I want to
Okay,
come to the
okay,
good
okay.
stuff.
I'm sorry. I'm always so impatient, Twan. I should just let you talk. I should just let you talk.
Yeah. Um, his trade policy is awful. He started these trade wars. He's come up with these new tariffs. He's closed the border pretty much. Um, he has made immigration almost impossible. So he's got a lot of bad policies, but he also has some good ones. And you have to give the guy credit where credit is due, even if I can't stand him. When he does good things, he should be given credit for it. And of course, where it comes to deregulation, he's done a very good job. He has deregulated a lot more than Ronald Reagan has, which was they're basically the only two presidents who've done any major deregulation, with Jimmy Carter a distant third. So what's happened in general over the last 100 years is that the burden of regulation has grown tremendously. I remember a scene from Milton Friedman's documentary 1980, Free to Choose, where he showed how much the Federal Register had grown. So he brought in a wheelbarrow of documents that showed how many regulations there were, I don't know, 50 years before, and then he showed how many there are today, and it was like dozens of wheelbarrows filled with paperwork. But since 1980, that has grown a lot more. Today, you need trucks full
Yeah.
for all these regulations rather than wheelbarrows.
Yeah, people need to work
Uh,
somehow.
and yeah,
All these government employees. What would they do
yeah.
without
So
it?
Trump has promised to do deregulation, and he's actually kept the promise. He promised that he would scrap two rules for every new one passed, and I think he has actually done better than that. He has been able to do away with many more rules for every new one passed. So, and that's part of the reason why, before the Corona crisis hit, the American government had become less of a burden on the U.S. economy, which is why the U.S. economy was growing relatively fast compared to previous decades during the Trump years before the Corona crisis hit. So deregulation is something he did well. Another thing he did well is tax cuts. He he cut the corporate income tax, which used to be the pretty almost the world's highest at 35%. He cut it down to 21%. He's cut some other taxes too. So he's also cut income tax. Another interesting thing that he did is he capped the amount of state income tax that could be deducted from the federal income, and that increases tax competition. So the way it used to be, if you lived in a high tax state like California, that the taxes income at a maximum rate of 13% on top of the federal rate of almost 40%, then the California income tax paid was a deduction for the federal income tax, which made it sort of bearable to live in California. That's no longer the case. One of his tax reforms was that the amount of state income tax that can be deducted is capped at $10,000, which means that now the wealthy in California actually pay the full 13%, which gives them an incentive to either leave the state or lobby for lower taxes, which increases tax competition, which is a very good thing because tax competition is the only thing that keeps us, that saves us from the politicians raising taxes on us. So he's done some good things too. As for Biden, I would say I don't remember a single thing that he's ever done that was good. There could have been some, but
He makes
all
me
the things
laugh
that I've
often. Is that a good thing?
all the policies he has supported, all the laws that he's voted for, I've never heard of a single good one. If you look at the policies he's now advocating, they're all about making government even bigger, making government spend even more money, about restricting our freedoms even further. Um, it's very difficult to find a good thing to say about Biden. The only good thing I can think of saying about him is that he opposes Trump's trade and immigration policy.
Hmm.
But the question is, does he really mean it? Maybe he's just saying that because he's against Trump. Because when he's in a position, uh, when the Democrats are in a position to do something about it, to make trade free or to make immigration free, they don't really do it.
Hmm.
So even when the Democrats control the White House and the Congress, they don't really do it. So so he does promise two good things, which is free immigration and freer trade, but we don't know if we can trust him about this.
I heard you say one thing, or I heard you say many things, but one thing that stood out for me in what you just said is you mentioned the limiting freedom today much more than our previous conversations. Freedoms are being limited all over the globe. I don't know if you have seen yesterday's press conference by the Prime Minister of the Netherlands. Although I'm not there anymore, I still watch
But I
that stuff.
heard part of it on the radio.
They are going to close bars and restaurants at 10 o'clock.
Hmm.
The mask mandate is not far out. I believe they are building up towards a narrative regarding aerosol transmission, where they are going to going to a second lockdown, where well we basically are seeing the controlled demolition of our economy, as I refer to it very often on this stream. Um, how far is politics allowed to go if there is such a clear conflict of interest through the WHO with its investors that basically are performing a coup today on governments because of the change in a definition of pandemic, and where will this go? Personally, I believe that we have not seen the last of it, and that it will last a lot longer. And what should we do to break out of that? Or is it all justified if something bad happens, like a pandemic? Should we be limited in our freedom like we are today? Would you like to go into that? Or
Yes,
could
of
you?
course. Well, first of all, yes. I mean, if we were struck by the Black Plague, like in the 13th century, and a third of the population is killed, if it was that extreme, then I could have a certain amount of, uh, of sympathy and a
Hmm.
certain amount of support, even for restrictions on our freedoms, if it prevents a third of the population being killed. But that's not what this coronavirus is. I mean, if you look at the death, at the people the number of people who died from coronavirus, that's not a lot more than the number of people that die every single year from the flu. Um,
It's very similar
and
numbers. I believe
yeah,
the
so
flu is
we,
even higher. In one of the last numbers that I saw, it was zero point 0.2 for the flu and 0.16 for corona. Of course, that's all arbitrary, and what you count as a COVID death and everything. But it's very similar numbers. So
yeah, so um, yeah, that's my point. The number of people who die from COVID is similar to the flu. Maybe it's more, maybe it's a little more, but even if it's a little more, that doesn't justify the police state that's descended upon us.
hmm.
Uh, and I mean, even the Hong Kong flu of the late '60s, it killed a lot of people. It killed over 1 million people, and there was no shutdown, there was no lockdown, there was no police state checking people whether they have a party at their home, whether they go to work when they shouldn't, and that sort of bizarre situation we have right now. So um, quarantine used to be a rule that was a policy that was imposed on the people who are sick and who may infect others and get them sick too.
Mm-hmm.
So in the old days, if you had a disease that was communicable and was a serious disease, and you were suffering from it, and you were probably contagious, that used to be a justification for a quarantine measure,
Yeah.
and that was defensible because obviously if you are contagious and there's a serious risk that you'll kill people by getting too close to them, then that is a justification for um, for forcing these people to stay at
I
home,
believe that
stay in
quarantine.
place. But it's not what we have today. What we have today is that billions of people who are not sick at all, not contagious at all, they're all being forced to stay home
Yeah.
or not travel or have all these strange restrictions on them.
I believe that the quarantine comes from the Navy, or how do you say, maritime law, and that when a ship, bless you, a ship that would port at the docks, while in the meantime, Pokrace did not kill himself. Welcome to the stream, Pokrace. Make sure to join in on the raffle by writing down exclamation mark raffle. I'm currently having my birthday stream talking with Toine Manders about. We already spoke about the elections in the U.S. Currently talking about quarantine, and I believe that the quarantine comes from the French word 40, which means 40. And when a ship entered the docks, entered the port, and there was a suspicion of people being sick, then the ship and all the people on it had to stay 40 days before anybody could leave the ship, and they were gonna have to find out whether in those 40 days anybody became sick, and if they became sick, the ship couldn't unload basically, and if nobody got sick, then it was okay to unload the ship and let the crew out on the land. So and today, of course, it's kind of the opposite. Everybody is basically guilty until proven otherwise, and it's a very strange situation. It also seems to me like governments just don't want to listen. I feel that there is a double agenda happening. I wrote a story about it, which I'm going to read out just after our conversation finishes and before my interview with James Kramer of SimpleLedger.io is going to start. Um, do you know the aerosol narrative? Basically, in the Netherlands, we have one guy called Maurice de Hond who is talking about his explanation of COVID transmission, not just COVID, but also flu transmission. And I believe that this narrative of aerosol transmission will be launched to us in the next 5 weeks before the elections in the United States, and that it will be used to basically spread the idea, not a disease, but the idea, which basically is also some kind of a disease sometimes, but um, they're going to try and spread the idea that we will make each other sick through aerosol transmission, and because of that, voting in a voting booth will be so dangerous that it cannot happen, and all votes have to come in through the mail. And I expect a lot of voter fraud that way this year with the US elections. And personally, I feel as if this is not the only reason why we are dealing with this COVID disease, because of course there are many more, but it's one of the ways how some people try to make this situation work for their benefit. So um, yeah, maybe I was not clear enough on that, but um, have you heard of the aerosol transmission? What do you think of the wearing of face masks? Have you already seen my face mask? By the way, I make my own face mask here because this is how I need to go to the supermarket. I'm not allowed to go in. I don't know if you can see it, Twan. I am showing on the different camera. This is my face mask. I made it myself out of chicken gaze because
I I've seen it before, but I haven't been able to see your face on Skype ever since we started.
oh, I thought I changed the settings. Let me double check. Let me double check. Oh, I didn't press OK. Apologies for that. Now here I am. Here I am. I almost did it. Here is my face mask of the chicken gaze, but you have seen it. Okay, that's a good. I have to wear it
Yeah.
here. The thing is that if a business owner, a shop owner, uh, allows somebody inside of his shop and he is caught, he has to pay a fine of 200,000 Serbian dinar, which is approximately 2,000 euros. And well, although I think the regulations are ridiculous, I don't want to bring somebody in danger with my civil disobedience, basically. So I don't want my civil disobedience become their civil disobedience. So I go to the shops with a mask like this, and then I get a lot of comments, and they say, "Ah, this is not a good mask." I say, "Why not? It's covering my mouth and my nose, so it's a mask." And you are not a policeman, so don't worry about it. If anybody wants to fine you, here is my Liberland diplomatic passport, and I want to have a conversation with anybody that wants to give you a fine. So, um, yeah, that's how I walk around town sometimes here. But yeah, well, I think that there is gonna be a lot of um, well, a lot of time to come where we will have uncertainty with this. I think that the economy is going to get a real hit in the next couple of weeks, also to influence the elections. Um, and Do you see that any different? Do you believe that we will ever break out? What do we need to do to get out of this situation? You have an idea about that? Or is it just, should we wait for a vaccine and stand in line to get it? Is that the solution?
Well, are you asking what should we do to end this government tyranny, or is it what should we do to end this pandemic?
Well, that's for me, it's one and the same, or not? Is there a difference between
Oh,
that?
it's not the same at all. I mean,
Ah,
the real problem. I mean, the pandemic is bad, but the government tyranny that's been imposed uh, and ostensibly justified by the pandemic
yeah,
is a
I get
lot
you.
worse.
I get
That's
you.
the
I get
real
you.
big problem.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, a bad flu, yeah, that is obviously that's a bad thing. I mean, if normally 600,000 people die of the flu in a year, now it's a million. That's a problem. Obviously, I don't want to make it sound as if it's not a problem. It is a major problem, and it would be good if we could fix that. But what the government is doing is establishing a police state, establishing tyranny, is ruining our economy, is creating poverty, is is going to force our kids and grandkids to pay these huge debts they're incurring for the rest of their lives. It's a lot of people are becoming unemployed, and unemployed people tend to get depressed.
Hmm.
Um, it's very bad for your life expectancy to become unemployed. You tend to get sick a lot more often. You tend to commit suicide more often. You're more likely to commit suicide if you become unemployed. These are major problems that the government is creating. A lot of people are losing their businesses as a result. And typically it is the large businesses that get bailed out, and so the businesses that are closed typically are the small businesses, who are typically people who have invested their life savings, who are very passionate about their business, and they're losing it.
Hmm.
So this to me, this is the real major problem that we're dealing with, much more than the virus. The virus, I assume there will be a vaccine. Um, as there usually is for other coronaviruses like the flu and the cold are also coronaviruses. So I assume there will be a vaccine, and the people who want to vaccinate themselves, they will be able to do so, and and the problem will then be a lot smaller than it is today. That's what I expect to happen. I think government is actually standing in the way of progress in many situations. Sometimes government forces people that have COVID to go to nursing homes and kill their fellow nursing home patients. That's happened in New York. The government sometimes makes it illegal to use methods they have not yet granted permission for, to use medication they have not granted permission for, to use masks they have not granted permission for, to use tests they have not granted permission for yet. So the government is stopping progress, is adding to the problem rather than solving the problem in very many cases. So I think government is our enemy here, and ending government tyranny is a much higher priority than solving the pandemic. I think the scientists will will come up with a solution for the pandemic, and even if not, I mean the Hong Kong flu, it's no longer around. It ran its course and then it disappeared.
Yeah.
Even the Spanish flu, that was a lot worse than the Hong Kong flu. It disappeared. This one will disappear too. That's more than I can say for governments. Typically, what governments do is they never let a good crisis go to waste. Whenever there's a crisis, government grows. Government starts spending more money, hiring more people, making more rules, taking away more of our freedoms. And when a crisis is over, the government never goes back to its original size. Milton Friedman said there's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program.
Yeah.
Another libertarian called it the ratchet effect. So every time there's some excuse for growing government,
they will.
When the excuse is over, when the crisis is over, it never goes back to the original size, like a ratchet.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that is our priority. That should be our priority: is fighting this expanding government tyranny. And how to do it? It's not an easy thing to do, obviously. The people that have been most successful in fighting the size of government and have been most successful in spreading ideas of liberty and ideas of reining in the power of government. Typically, over the last 100 years, I would say it's Ayn Rand, Milton Friedman, Friedrich Hayek, and Ron Paul. Those are probably the four most successful libertarians. And the way they have been able to spread their ideas is, to a large extent, is by writing books. In the case of Ayn Rand, it's writing novels. In the case of Friedman and Hayek, they wrote nonfiction works, they wrote scientific works, and more popular works describing the benefits of freedom and the dangers of government. They gave speeches, they gave interviews.
Did they stream as well? Did they live stream on Twitch? No,
that
it's
wasn't
just
around.
of course. I'm just joking.
But Ron Paul does that. Ron
Yes.
Paul has
And
have
you heard what happened last week with him?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I've heard it. I'm glad he's recovered.
Yes.
So Ron Paul, he did most of his spreading of libertarian ideas by running in elections and being elected and using his office to spread ideas rather than trying to trying to compromise and achieve his goals through compromise. That's not what he did. He was very principled, and as a result, usually when Congress, when the votes in Congress were counted, there was one guy voting against Ron Paul and the rest voting for. That was a very common thing.
Mm-hmm.
But he was very successful in doing that. That's partly why I've chosen to spend part of my life being politically active, running for office and leading a political party. That's part of why I'm now involved with the International Alliance of Libertarian Parties, because I believe it is, well, it can be a very effective method to spread ideas. I don't think that being active in politics as a libertarian is such a great idea, because I think there's a good chance of becoming president or becoming prime minister, and then using that office to cut back the government and improve and enlarge freedoms. I don't think that's in the foreseeable future. That's how being politically active as a libertarian is going to contribute to more freedom. I think the real way that we contribute to more freedom by being politically active is because it's an efficient way to spread ideas. And part of the reason of that for that is that the media take you more seriously when you are running for office.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they tend to ignore libertarian organizations that are not political parties, and more so than they tend to ignore libertarian parties, especially when they run on elections. So that's part of why I think it can be a very effective method. Also, what you should do to spread these ideas of liberty depends on what you're good at and what you like doing. If you like writing books, then that's what you should do. If that's what you're good at. If you're good at writing articles, that's what you should do. If you're good at giving speeches, that's what you should do. If you're good at running for office, being politically active, that's what you should do. If you're good at making videos, make videos. So it depends on what you're good at and what you enjoy doing. Um, Obviously, there's no one method that everybody should use.
Well, Twan, it's been very empowering again to hear from you. The first 34 years of my life, I didn't achieve it yet, but maybe the second 34 years, I will, achieve a little bit more of that goal in making a smaller government, because I also believe that, people should be more responsible in that and if they are, we just don't need that government that much. Part of why we, at least in the Netherlands where I grew up, the status quo is in a mindset that we need this government because they will take care of us. And of course, many good things have happened. Like I mentioned with my previous guest, I have lived a life without hunger, without any kind of war happening. So my government until today, I cannot complain about my life, at least, it's been pretty cool so far. But I still believe that if we would have a little bit more responsibility, then we just don't need to have that much government. And I also believe that all the joy I have experienced in my life is somebody else uh, his uh, uh, um, his pain sometimes, because a lot of the the things that service my happiness, um, I haven't seen any of the bad things that came out of that, because it's just not in my sight. And if you don't want to see it, you will never see it. But it definitely is somewhere out there. And so, yeah, I hope that makes sense, all the gibberish I'm ranting out here. But I want to thank you a lot here for being with me, Twan. I don't know if you want to add something to what you already said, but I think I have asked all my questions. I'm very honored that you were with me today on my birthday, 29th of September 2020. And hopefully we can do it again someday in the future. Maybe with the Carnival. I saw that you shared some song with me. Carnival is not gonna happen this year, so we will have a lot of time. Maybe if we're all gonna be in lockdown, that we can have some chat through Skype with each other. We will see. Um, for now, I want to thank you once again. If you want to add anything, feel free to do so. And otherwise, I wish you a very good day.
Yeah, maybe as a final comment on strategy to spread liberty, I think we should focus as libertarians on decentralization. So on fighting centralization, because decentralization creates competition among governments, and that is probably the best way to prevent the growth of government or to bring about the shrinking government power. And another thing that we should focus on, I think, is ending the government monopoly on education. Because when the government educates our children, you can bet that they are going to abuse that opportunity to spread their own ideas.
Yeah, that's two very good comments. Two very good comments.
So thank you for your invitation.
All right.
And enjoy the rest of your birthday.
Thank you, Toine. See you again, hopefully another day.
Until then,
Bye bye.
goodbye.
Bye bye. Toine Manders, everybody, that was Toine Manders. I see James Kramer is already